No, sir, we are just about to get started right now.
I don't think he can hear us.
I'm going to message him privately and mute him so we can get started. Sorry, Dr. Porter.
Oh, no worries. Just let me know when to go.
Yeah, we're good to go.
Okay. Again, good morning, everyone. Please accept my sincerest apologies for the troubleshooting. However, before we get started, I would like to have permission from an elder present to speak.
You have my permission to speak.
Ashe, thank you. So good morning, everyone, again, and welcome. This is our second day of mid-year and our first Mbongi of the day, which is titled Political and Civic Engagement, How Our Presence Shapes Elections and Beyond. One of the things that we like to do is give you information about what an Mbongi is, what are the terms that we use, and why do we use the terms that we use. So first, I am Dr. Tiffany Porter, and I am the General Assembly Chair for the Association of Black Psychologists for the years 2020 and 2022. So this is actually the end of my term. The General Assembly is the working arm of ABPSI, meaning we are the place where you can roll up your sleeves and do a lot of good work. So we welcome anyone who is interested in learning more about the GA to reach out to us, and we will be more than happy to have you as part of our community. And so because we are a professional organization from an Afrocentric perspective, we honor our ancestors, elders, and ourselves as family and in the spirit of Ubuntu. So on behalf of myself, our past presidents, our ancestors, elders, our current president and president-elect, welcome to our Mbongi. So Mbongi is basically where we have our assemblies. And this is where we refer to a common shelter to take care of and address any of the issues that we may have. And so this is where a lot of our critical work is done, where we can institutionalize the idea of community thinkers and activists that have a responsibility to take care of the welfare and well-being of our people. So the Mbongi Assembly is designed to plead our case. It is a series of conversations that are specifically charged with the responsibility to capture, critique things that we consider dearly. Nothing cuts deeper to the core and purpose of African American and African people throughout the diaspora than the truth of our reality as reflected in and represented by our spiritual, intellectual, social, and artistic memory and creations. So clearly, the Association of Black Psychologists should and must be a vehicle for capturing, critiquing, and clarifying those things which we consider to be dearly. So thank you so much. What we are going to do now is introduce our first moderator of the day. And so Wanye is actually part of the board of directors for the association. And give me 1 second and I can give you more information. So Lanye London is an MSW and the chief executive officer for Serenity Village Developments, which is a 501c3 organization dedicated to providing holistic mental health and alternating housing education to individuals and families. Ms. London also serves as our Western representative for the Association of Black Psychologists with experience in the nonprofit sector spanning 20 years. She has served as a behavioral mental health workforce advocate and public speaker, working with the LA County, Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health, Department of Public Social Services, and California Community College Chancellor's offices. Due to her broad knowledge of mental health and housing, Ms. London's input is sought after across the country, including invitations by local and state politicians to speak regarding solutions to homelessness in Los Angeles County. as a co-author of the article, Seeing One Another, the creation of the Sabuana Healing Circles, and co-creator of the Behavioral Mental Health Toolkit for Educators. Ms. London is a leader in the field of cultural and generational psychological education. And so it is with great pleasure that I introduce our moderator. Anya.
Greetings, everyone. Again, my name is Lanya London. I will be your moderator for this morning. We have 6 panelists that you will be hearing from today, the first of which is Senator Vernon Sykes. Dr. Senator Vernon Sykes is serving his 2nd term in the Ohio Senate after holding position at the Ohio House of Representatives and Akron City Council. He represents the 28th Senate District, which includes the greater Akron area. A longtime advocate for redistricting reform, Sykes co-chaired the Ohio Redistricting Commission and was instrumental in passing legislation to improve the way Ohio draws its state legislation and congressional map in 2015 and 2018. He also successfully fought to expand the access for early childhood education, making higher education affordable, combating child abuse, and preventing housing discrimination against people with disabilities. Additionally, as a ranking member of both the Senate Finance Committee and Small Business Economic Opportunity Committees, Sykes oversees the state operating budget and other legislative impacting small business and Ohio's economics. Senator Sykes also takes pride in his service on the Senate Primary and Secondary Education Committees, the State Controlling Board and Rail Development Commission, the Ohio Legislation Children's Caucus, the Executive Board, the Ohio Legislation Black Caucus, and the Fathers Commission and Business First Caucus. Wow, he does a lot in his community. In 2020, Senator Sykes retired as Emeritus Professor of Political Science and Director of Columbus Program in State Issues at Kent State University. Sykes completed his undergraduate studies at Ohio University, where he received his BBA in Management and Organizational Behavior. He then attended Wright State University and Harvard University, where he earned a master's in social and applied economics and a master in public administration, respectively. The doctor earned his doctorate in political administration and at the University of Akron. So there's so much going on with Senator Sykes. I'm so proud. That same commitment and innovation has earned Senator Sykes several distinguished awards, including but not limited to the 2012 Public Elected Official of the Year Award for the National Association of Social Workers. And in 2015, Champion for Working Families and Civil Rights Award from the Ohio AFL-CIO. In 2018, Legislative Champion of the Year from the Ohio Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs. In 2018 as well, Outstanding Contributor of Health Educator Award from the Ohio Society of Public Health Education. 2018 again, Legislator of the Year Award from the Ohio Association of Elected Officials. And in 2018 again, Small Business Advocate of the Year from the Greater Cleveland Partnership and its Council of Small Enterprises, and the 2015 Progressive Heroes Award from the Ohio Democratic Party. Of course, he can't do this alone. He and his wife, Barbara, live in Akron with 2 daughters, Stancy and Amelia, and 2 energetic, loving grandchildren, Hugh and Hope. I present to you Dr. Senator Sykes.
Good morning. Good morning. Glad to be here. My presentation, I hope, is almost as long as your introduction. I really appreciate that. I want to talk just a little, just briefly. People might have questions, but just briefly about redistricting. The redistricting is a part and responsibility in our national government is delegated to the states. So states configured legislative districts for both the state legislature in Ohio, that's the House and the Senate, and in the national legislature, and that is the Congress. So the state has the responsibility of drawing both of those configuration for line drawing. And it's based on the census that's conducted every 10 years. As population shifts, we want to make sure that we have equal population in those districts. And so they're readjusted every 10 years to deal with the transitions of people moving around, increasing and decreasing in population growth. Redistricting is the process of drawing the lines of districts from which the public officials are elected from both the legislative, state legislative and congressional districts. Necessary process to reflect the changes in population and racial diversity after each census every 10 years. A fair map reflects this partisan balance. It provides real pathways to representation on for communities of color and keeps our communities together. We'd like to prevent gerrymandering. And as long as we have a constitutional provision, one man, one vote that was instituted back in the 60s, we have these districts, single member districts with equal populations. And the states have the responsibilities of configuring those populations, but the districts can be done in a discriminatory way. So we'd like to prevent gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is a tool to manipulate electoral outcomes or discriminate against certain groups, against political parties. It undermines the economic and political power of people, poor people, of working people, and people of color. So we wanted to do whatever we could to try to prevent gerrymandering. Now, we've had gerrymandering in the state since the 60s when we had the one man, one vote and had these single member districts, particularly at the state level. And so there's been a groundswell of support and advocacy to try to prevent gerrymandering, to try to limit gerrymandering in the state of Ohio. But finally, in 2018, the voters of Ohio overwhelmingly approved a constitutional amendment establishing new procedures for congressional districts. And in 2015, new procedures for the state districts, the House and the Senate. The General Assembly and established a election redistricting commission, of which I sit presently as co-chair, to work on trying to come up with fair districts. Now, this was the first time these new procedures, since right after the 2020 census, these new procedures were implemented, and the process produced both state maps and congressional maps. But the Supreme Court of Ohio have just ruled that those maps are do gerrymander, they're not fair, and they provide more support in a direction for one party over another party. And so directed the commission and the legislature to actually configure new districts at both the state House and Senate and the congressional districts. And so the whole idea is to have a fair representation. The percentage of votes divided fairly between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. The preferences of the voters expressed over the last 10 years for party affiliation is a split proportionality of approximately 54% Republican and 46% Democrat. But currently, the districts configured for Congress are 75% for the Republicans and only 25% for the Democrats. So that's just an example of how out of kilter and unfair the districts have been. And so we're working to try to make those changes and corrections. And the Supreme Court is in the position to rule to make sure comply with the new constitutional provisions. So that's kind of a short overview of redistricting and where we stand today. The first deadline is on the 24th of January for the state legislative districts, and there's 60 days for the congressional districts. And I stand to answer any questions anybody might have. Certainly agree,
Good morning. Thank you so very much, Representative Sykes, for all that you have done and continue to do. I have a question. Is there any way we can stop the districts, including prison populations who don't have the right to vote? Because I'm sick and tired of Jim Jordan gerrymandering himself into Congress based on a population that doesn't have any rights, most of which are Black and most of which would not support him.
Thank you for your question.
That is a very good issue, a good question, and an issue that we're working on. It's not only a problem in Ohio, but nationwide. And we're looking at legislation that could possibly change that. But every step along the way toward progress is a struggle. And so that continues to be a struggle that we're trying to champion, trying to make adequate changes to improve the redistricting process. It's a good point. I'm glad you raised that issue.
Senator Sykes, we actually have two questions for you that we'd like to ask. And as a means for tapping into self-determination, how will we address engaging the community and its political needs?
You know, the guidelines and the philosophy, the basic philosophy of democracy is well-meaning. However, the quality of this representative democracy is dependent upon the quality of the participation. And what is so important for us, particularly when trying to make change, is we've got to have our voices heard. And that's in several ways. Of course, we can write letters and we can protest and we can go to committee hearings, but it's so important for us to register and to vote. It's extremely, extremely important, and particularly with the new advents of anti-gerrymandering, where we're providing more power and influence to the individual. And so that the districts are fair and processes and procedures are fair, but we need participation. And no one can advocate your interests better than you. And so there's several ways to participate in the process. And I just encourage us to stand strong and participate to make changes in the government.
Ashe. One more question. what culturally informed approach, or just reaching down to the people culturally, can we use, especially during the pandemic, to move forward in political and civil engagement?
Well, I think it's important for us to make sure that we have good sources of information, adequate sources for information. And oftentimes that has to be generated by us in the Black press and so forth, in our leadership, to make sure we understand, for instance, the public policy on vaccinations and the policies that deal with the pandemic. We need to know particularly what the facts are, particularly because our population is harmed more. It's more deaths percentage-wise, it's more illness percentage-wise. It's easier for us because of our housing arrangements and our working conditions to contract this virus. And so it's so important for us to have leadership and information resources, social media and so forth, to communicate to the populace so that we can take adequate steps to promote our health and our interests in the public arena.
Ashe, thank you so very much. Everyone, please give Senator Sykes a wonderful Facebook and YouTube round of applause for his participation in our panel today. Ashe, thank you so much, Senator, for your time.
Thank you.
Next up is one of our own. Miss Jonisha Jojo Hickson is a fourth year doctoral student at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, where she also received a Master's of Arts in Clinical Psychology. She obtained her Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology and African Studies at Montclair State University. JoJo, as we affectionately call her, has completed a Holocaust, genocide, and human rights internship in previous years and received a certification of excellence in clinical suicidology from the National Registrars. JoJo is also her own CEO and founder of Dear Black Prophet Company, centered on the principles, of the Black Panther Party. The Association of Black Psychologists also has her in culture in many different ways, as she's bestowed at the student circle as well. Please forgive me. So without further ado, I bring to you Miss JoJo. Take it away, JoJo.
Thank you, Lanye. We had a really interesting morning, but I'm happy to be here. I love my ABSI. I love the work that we're doing. And right in alignment with Senator Sykes' speech, I think that the Association of Black Psychologists gives us a really great platform to engage people civically and politically at the intersections of social justice and psychology. And I think that as a student and as an upcoming professional, I've really tried to take advantage of that work. And one of the ways that I've taken advantage of that opportunity is through this 6-member implementation group, which was called to order by some of our past presidents, as well as some of the co-founders of the Association of Black Psychologists. And so what that group was called to order for was to respond to the APA's apology for racism, because we really saw that as kind of a way for them to kind of make it seem like they were on the right side of history and try to really engage in this revisionist history, where we know that some Black students, faculty and staff and psychologists that are operating in the field are still being harmed by this association through their monopoly. They have control of credentialing processes. They have control of accrediting certain programs that our Black student psychologists are going through. They have control over who can, provide continuing educations. And so we think that that apology kind of fell really short on meeting opportunities for, actual restitution and restoration. And so what the SIG does is we were called to order to respond to that. We put out a statement, which kind of really deeply outlined why we were unable as the Association of Black Psychologists to accept that apology and where they kind of fell short. And we were able to cite historical incidences that they didn't mention or failed to mention in their apology. And we're still continuing this work. We have put out a call for our membership to kind of gauge their interest in providing expertise in kind of this policy brief that we're going to be promoting so that we can engage our senators in a way that is easy and comprehensive in outlining the work that the Association of Black Psychologists is doing. And so hopefully folks will look at our social media and respond to that call or connect with us so they can provide areas of expertise and policy recommendations for education, for housing, for farming and food, for police reform and things like that. And so I think that also in alignment with the work that I'm doing as an upcoming Black psychologist, or a trainee rather, I'm doing my dissertation on racial trauma and the development of a Black activist identity. And when I talk to people about, joining my study, they're like, I'm not sure if I'm an activist. I don't know that I'm an activist. And I'm like, listen, if you're a Black professional, if you're a Black artist, a creative, if you're in any type of field doing Black work and your consciousness is in alignment with African-centered beliefs, then you are an activist. I think that we can promote change and really fight back against this Eurocentric ideology that's hurting our people in different realms. So education, if you're a Black educator teaching about the history of Black people in a way that is accurate and not teaching about, Columbus because he didn't really discover America, I think you're an activist. If you are a Black psychologist and you're creating theory, shout out to Nana Linda, and you're putting forth ways of being that is in alignment with African centeredness, then you're an activist. I think that if you are a creative and your music is about African consciousness and African spirituality and togetherness, then you're an activist. I think the way that people might believe that activism is enacted, which might look like, just being in the streets, I think that is a very limited belief and that's a very limited scope. And I think that people should, get with the Association of Black Psychologists if they're looking for ways to further engage in political and civic engagement. I'm also not sure how much time I have. So am I still good to go? Are there any questions from the audience?
We have two questions that we want to engage you with.
Okay.
First question is, as a means of tapping into our self-determination, how should we address and engage in community and political needs, like as a people?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the times people don't see the system as oppression as being omnipresent, which it is, and that is to say that is impacting us in areas of food and housing, in areas of education attainment and job attainment. And so some of the work that I do with Dear Black Prophets, and also in partnership with like the DC chapter of ABSI, shout out to the chap, is doing community engagement, which looks like, outreach to provide basic needs to our most marginalized, to make sure that we're coming together as a community and collecting things that we no longer need that is still, appropriate that other people might need. So right now, the DC chapter and associate in conjunction with my nonprofit, we're doing a coat drive so that we can give back to, folks without housing because it's free as brick outside, as we might say in Jersey. And so just trying to tap into your community and looking at the needs and making sure that in the best way that you can, you're giving back. So if you have some clothes that you don't need, organize with people in your community, with organizations to do a community outreach so you can redistribute those needs. So you're not just throwing it away and wasting goods and material. And I think that a lot of the times when we think about trauma, we think about the way that Western people or white people might talk about trauma, which looks like, hopefully I don't trigger anybody, but sexual violence and domestic violence. But a lot of the time, some of the things we are seeing in the Black community are not normal. Having food insecurity is not normal. Having housing insecurity is not normal. Having being educated in dilapidated buildings with dilapidated textbooks is not normal. So really just seeing what the needs are in your own community and trying to get in alignment and in community with people who have this the same like mind as you, that can provide a need as small as it might be or as small as you might perceive it to be. It's going to help somebody, and hopefully that somebody looks like you. So hopefully that answered the question. So in short, just, organize as best you can to meet the immediate needs of the people.
Ashe. And one more question for you. What culturally informed approach can we engage in, especially during the pandemic, as we continue to move forward with political and civil engagement?
Mm-hmm. I think that this is something that I'm learning as an upcoming professional, but definitely take care of yourself. We are an African people, and a lot of the times our elders teach us that we are spirit beings instead of, we are spirit beings having a human experience. And so tapping into African-centered, methods of expressing self, like making sure that we're dancing, making sure that we're being in community with other Black folks who are doing this work and who are also not doing this work, making sure, I don't know, we're singing when we get a moment to, listening to music, doing poetry. I know the Association of Black Psychologists is doing Sababona healing circles, which does look like fellowship, which does look like tapping into our spirituality to take a step back and check in with ourselves before we go in further and pour into the community. So just making sure that you're engaging in African-centered ways of being, such as, again, tapping into the creative arts is a way that I know I can sustain myself so I can give back to my community. I also hope that answered the question. I can be super chatty, but yeah, that's my answer.
We love it. We love it. Thank you, Janisha, for your work with ABSI as well as being here today. Everybody give Janisha your jazz hands on screen. Thank you so much. So we're going to move to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Iya Fololala Omobola. This is one of those things that you have to practice, everyone. If you do not practice using your African language or African tongues, this is definitely one of those names that you should practice a few times, which I have. She hails from Cleveland, Ohio, was raised by activist parents, and has followed the path of both spiritual and political activism. She founded and directed Tomorrow's Children, a cultural and youth innovation program for a number of years in Illinois and Ohio, with hopes of starting this in Jackson, Mississippi. Additionally, she has served as the administrative assistant in the Chicago Mayor Harold Washington's Office of Affirmative Action, and then worked in special projects in the Office of Legislation for Mayor Washington, who made his transition. He is now an ancestor. Currently, she serves as a transformational justice planner and strategy consultant, and developed assistance in obtaining grants for People's Advocacy Institute in Georgia. So without further ado, Iya, it's all yours.
Thank you. Yes, it is actually PAI's in Jackson, Mississippi, but I'm appreciative of and honored to be here this day. Looking forward to seeing how this goes. I would say that I would never in a million years, as they say, guess that I would have ended up living in Jackson. But there are a number of activities that are going on here, particularly in Jackson, more generally in Mississippi and across the South, that I'd like to mention that I think are applicable to what we're discussing today. The People's Advocacy Institute works with formerly incarcerated citizens, including the rights for them to vote. So we are indeed working on that issue here as well. Also assisting them in getting jobs, getting past the idiosyncrasies and the psychology that have been ingrained within them, that they're doomed to be who they've been classified as being. So we're working with them. We have a mechanism known as the Jackson's People's Assembly, and this is a tool that we use here to engage our communities and to see what issues that are prevalent within them, and we come together periodically and meet with to identify what the issues are. We also invite city officials to come to those meetings so that we can strategize and see what is the best approach to take. And they've actually ended up being fairly successful. People who have not attended seem to feel that it's just a bunch of hogwash, but those who have been in attendance see production that has happened out of meeting with each other and beyond as being something that is practical. Another thing that's happening here is the National Black, in the South is, or it's actually happening across the country, is the National Black Food Justice Alliance, which was begun 8 years ago by my daughter, Dara Cooper, who lives in Atlanta, Georgia. This alliance provides direct support of at-risk Black farmers. I work with the leadership team and a couple of other organizations within this alliance. We grow and deepen membership bases of well-trained, politicized, high-capacity Black leaders and food system organizations that are committed to fighting for, building, and expanding a movement toward a racial justice and regenerative, sustainable food system. Another thing that we're doing here is that we are, one of the things that the Alliance is doing is building local coalitions in strategic sites who are centering on land reform in the fight against displacement, especially among our Black farmers, to engage collectives in developing and protecting land spaces, and convening of rural and urban land movements. So we bring all of that together and work in conjunction with each other to assist in that means. It was mentioned that I am I've started actually I'm working on creating a Umoja Transformation Council, and the purpose of this council is to serve to resolve differences that occur within organizations and between organizations. And so that is still in its works, but it's proving to be necessary, a necessity, and a valuable tool that we have in being able to talk among each other and figure out what's going on before it gets to the point of non-communication and non-resolution. So some of the culturally informed approaches that we engage in, we utilize an African perspective in our honoring each other, our elders, and our ancestors as approaches that we can engage within. We can engage. It's our religious perspective. We stand indeed on the shoulders of those who came before us. So we must understand what that means and fulfill it appropriately. And the first step is to understand those shoulders without the milking down of importance from those who did not have our self-interest in mind. I try not to get too involved in expounding upon my spirituality, but there's a number of us on the call today who understand that we need to stop buying into the hocus pocus. And please forgive me for anyone who takes offense at what I'm about to say, but Jesus was not white. I don't care what anyone says, no matter how deeply you go. If you go deep enough into the Bible, at any rate, it doesn't really matter. Christianity in its concept at this point has been used to imprison us as opposed to help us to remember who we are. And so we have our own means of dealing with spirituality, and we have our own means of looking to how we can help each other and enhance each other on a spiritual basis as well. So we have a spiritual house in Jackson, Mississippi, that a number of citizens do indeed belong to. And we have houses all over the country in which we delve in and we teach and we provide spiritual assistance to folk and helping people to remember whose shoulders they stand on and providing those shoulders for others to stand on and to keep on moving and doing this thing that we were innately born with, that was passed down from generation to generation to generation. These are the shoulders we're standing on to bring this forth. And then I think that the last thing that I would really like to let folk know about a mechanism that is being used here within Mississippi is the New African Investment Association Incorporated, which is a mutual aid resource council to provide emergency funding to Black farms, creating a policy roundtable of local and national food and land policy workers, uplifting and unifying the demands that are most impactful to Black folk, participating in the development of Red, Black, and Green New Deal with partners, and we are also of the New African Investment Association Incorporated in Hinds County, which has come together to build a collective financial institution that will assist the ongoing movement of our people to be self-determining. So we plan to achieve our financial goals by investing in the assets of the association in stocks, bonds, and other investments, real estate, business opportunities, etc., as determined by our members. And while our focus is financial, we also understand that self-determination cannot be achieved solely by financial endeavors. So we continually strive to educate our nation, our association, and ourselves in all the worthwhile matters pertinent to the improvement of new African people and our continued pursuit of freedom. And last statement, in order to maneuver through the pandemic, we have found Zoom to be a valuable instrument. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you so much for that. You are a wealth of wisdom and knowledge, and I have no further questions. You answered all of the questions that we had. And just for the fun of it, the two questions I had was, as a means of tapping into our self-determination, how should we address and engage in our communities and political needs? Unless you want to answer it specifically, you answered that. And the next question was, what culture? I'm sorry, would you?
Before we move on, I really strongly encourage to reach out to understand what the model of the Jackson People's Assembly is about, and
Okay.
how we're doing it here. And I'm sure we're not the only ones doing things along that line, but
Mhm.
that's a valuable tool to be able to pull, to educate, and to give back to the community and what's happening with them.
And that's the Jackson People's Assembly.
And you can contact them through me. You
Okay.
can also get in contact with the Black farmers to assist in political. That chat went away before I saw all of it. You can contact me as well.
Okay. Okay.
What
And
was
then the second question was, what culturally informed approaches can we engage in, especially during the pandemic, as we continue to move forward with political and civil engagement?
Yeah, it's our music. We have a number of venues here that have closed down now, and actually we're in the process. I and a couple of other people are looking for alternative ways in which we can engage them to perform again in a way that's going to be safe, health wise for all of us,
Sure.
but allows us to be in a little closer proximity than Zoom to participate in that. So we're looking into some of those, like having outdoor events with tents, or where the band performs in the tent and the people are out. We're exploring. So if anybody has any ideas, I would love to hear them. But yeah, we're trying to move beyond the being caged inside of our environment.
Ashe.
We can move forward in that direction.
Ashe, Ashe. Oh, thank you so much for
Madam Moderator, are you taking any questions or you have to move on?
the questions. We have a panel, if I'm not mistaken. The questions will be coming at the end. Is that correct, Tiffany? We'll have community engagement at the
Okay,
end.
pardon the interruption. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Is that it for me? Much love. Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to move to our fourth speaker of the morning. This is Gail Dudley, and widely recognized for her contributions around educating and voter rights advocacy, partnership building, and community building. A student of public administration with more than 25 years of leadership experience in public, corporate, nonprofit, and community contexts, Gail has demonstrated a passion for engaging and growing needs for declining neighborhoods and marginalized people by engaging creative partnerships and healthy stewardship of human capital and information resources. So without further ado, we would like to hear more from our sister Gail. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me to participate. I think I'm off mute. Yes, I am. Okay, I wanted to make sure of that. I want to jump in. I was listening to Senator Sykes earlier, and he was talking about a news source and what does that look like. And actually, on June the 22nd of 2020, I launched News in Motion because I wanted people to get factual news. So it's a digital news show Monday through Thursday on Facebook and on YouTube. And from that, just to give some numbers, when I saw a need of people who were not registered to vote, I pulled together people from different communities, and within 30 days, we had over 9,000 people registered so they could vote in that general election in 2020. That's a passion of mine. I see my role as someone who is equipping people, encouraging people, and getting them out there and empowering them with the truth when it comes to voting legislation, and things that are out there. We talk about the filibusters. If I can just say this, I'm amazed of how many people are unaware. They know that they can go and vote, but they're not really digging into the issues and to see the different bills and the legislation that's out there. So that's what I have really found my role to be. So I'm going to be giving some information, and then when I'm also off of here, I will put some information in the chat. And I'm watching the time too, because I love this, so I'll just get moving and going. But some things that I'm asking people to do even this weekend and going into the next 7 days is to check their voter registration. As someone who is always voting and who has voted in every election, even in checking my voter registration, I have found that I have been purged with no reason given. So I would have to go back in and to re-register to vote. My daughter, the same thing. She found that she was purged at one point, and she also always votes. I'm finding out that more and more people, if they're not checking the registration, that is happening. So one of my roles is to sit out here and tell people, make sure you're checking that. So for an example, the third day of every month, I am checking my voter registration to make sure everything's intact. So you may be saying, well, where do we go to do that? Well, here are some sites. You can go to usa.gov to check your voter registration. You can go to vote.gov, vote.org. You can also go to rockthevote.org, and whenweallvote.org. Those are just a few places you can go. There's also a fabulous app that's out there called the Party of Lincoln app. And this was designed by Karen Hunter. Now on her app, just to give you an idea of what's on here, you can check the voting guide. You can find out any issue that's going to be on the ballot in the primaries. You can check the view for the election map. You can check, you can also register to vote on these apps, change party affiliation if you choose to do so, run for office on her app, contact members of Congress. So let me stop right there and talk about that. Right now, everyone should be identifying who their representatives are and contacting them so that we can all have the right to vote. It's amazing that we're in 2022 and we're still having to fight for our right to vote. And even in doing so, I'm finding people, even over 40, asking me questions such as, well, what do I say? Who do I contact? There are even people who are unaware of their district and they're unaware of their representatives. And that's where we start. Because if we're talking about civic engagement, and we are here today, and thank you so much for bringing this to the forefront, one of the things that I'd share with people is that you have to identify what are some things that you want to see in your immediate community. Yes, we want to get to the federal government, but to begin with, what's happening in your immediate community? What's your cause? What's your passion? What's your pitch? And are you a voter to make sure that you can see some of these things happen? Another thing that people always are asking about, well, how do I come to the table? Well, believe it or not, even giving to a campaign, to a candidate who is running for office, that's a start. And along with that, we need to research the people that we're putting in these offices. And I cannot stress that enough, that we should research them. And then also a thing that I pull out is to connect the dots with our dollar. We're spending our hard-earned money, so we need to connect those dots with that dollar. Who are you giving your money to, and how much of that money, that profit, where is it going once it leaves your hands? And I know so many of us say, well, today that's kind of difficult because I want what I want. Okay, that's cool. But what else are you helping to enhance if you're not following that dollar? Our dollar talks, and we must connect the dots to following that dollar. That's why I'm back to voting. Voting is so important to look at that. Here are 8 things I want to share with us to look at this week, being in this MLK weekend, is again, check with your circle of influence to make sure they're registered to vote. I think so many of us just make the assumption that we're all registered. That's not the case. I can tell you that as a fact. Contact your local high school and see if you can go in and do some volunteerism and register those who will be 18 when it comes time to vote. Another thing is contact the colleges and universities in your town and do the same thing. Begin having conversations with your friends and family so they understand what's going on. For example, on Friday, the House voted to merge the 2 bills. That's the Freedom to Vote Act, as well as the John Lewis, I always have to, it's so long, John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Those 2 were voted to merge the 2. People for the longest thought there was only 1 bill. There were actually 2 bills. And again, the House has merged those. Now we're in this discussion of the filibuster. And we have Senator Chuck Schumer from the Democratic Party who wants to put a vote on the floor. Hopefully it will happen this weekend for the Voting Rights Act. But people need to be aware and understand that those 2 bills are merging. And I'm saying this, I'm trying to be careful, but I'm gonna be bold as my sister did beforehand. I'm actually amazed of the lack of education when it comes to voting. People think we vote and that's it. No, that's not it. That's just the beginning. It's the town hall meetings that we're not showing up at. It's to be able to raise those questions. It's to write into our senators and our House of Representatives to ask what's going on. We're not doing that. It's like we vote and we disappear, or we get so tired. And it's like, you can never really get tired of this because the cycle continues. Also, y'all, the primaries are just as important as the general election. This is no time to play. And this is where we need to connect the dots and to actually research the candidates. Who's going into these offices and why? What's their motivation? Do you know that we can check their voting record? We can. People are unaware of that. You can check to see, even in the House of Representatives or the Senate, how people voted, if they voted or if they chose not to vote. And it's just as important to know why they have not voted and they abstain from the vote, or they just say present. That's the research we got to get to the root of. Why did you just say present? Why didn't you actually vote yay or nay? That's where we need to get to the root. Again, we got to follow the money, believe it or not, to get there. The other things I want to add is don't give up the fight. Add the word advocate to your bio. And understand what you are advocating for and why you are advocating and the passion behind that. And then attend even PTA and PTO meetings in your community. You may no longer have children in those school systems, but your tax dollars, again, we got to follow that money. And then write your representative. Let them know, I'm a constituent of yours, and this is how I would like to get involved. And how can I come alongside you? That's whether you voted for them or not. I can go on and on. I don't know how much time I have left. I do want to add this piece too. Another good site is to go to the eac.gov. That is the Election Assistant Commission.gov. That's where you register to become poll workers. Why am I raising that? I am raising that when we're talking about civic engagement because poll workers are decreasing. And it happened when it came to the pandemic. It's happening because older people are not going to the polls to work any longer. And I can remember my grandmother when I was a little girl who had on her pearls, her pantyhose, her heels, her pocketbook, as they would call it, on her arm, just being proud to go and to be a poll worker. I think about that now, and I'm registered now as well. In the 2020 election, I think we registered through News in Motion close to 300 to 400 people to be poll workers. Why am I sharing this? Because it's in the marginalized communities where they will close those polling locations and people will not be able to vote because they don't have transportation to get to the other places, and they don't have the resources or the knowledge to tap in to find out where their polling location moved to. The moment they see a decrease in poll workers, they are going to close those particular polling locations. So I encourage you, if you have time, register to become a poll worker. There's training. Sometimes there's a stipend involved, but we all have to look at the different dots and connections when it comes to voting, voting right, and voter education. I think my time is up, so I will yield my time back to you.
Ashe, Ashe. Thank you so much, Sister Gail. And just to reiterate the questions, you can answer them a little bit further, but I think you did it as well. As a means of tapping into self-determination, how should we address and engage in our communities and our political needs? You did speak to registering for, poll work, right? And then the second question was, what culturally informed approach can we engage in, especially during the pandemic, as we continue to move forward with political and civil engagement? Maybe you can speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll speak to that one because I do believe I covered the other one. One thing we can do is at this point in time, especially with the gerrymandering going on, the redistricting that's on the table, and the fact that we still do not have a law for voters' rights right at this current moment, is that we write into our representatives. And it's what we say and how we say it. For example, on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, the White House comment lines are open for you to call into them, or you can go to, I believe it's senate.gov/ Senate-contact, and I'll find it out and put that in the chat as well, to write them and say, I would like for you to vote in favor of the voting rights law. As a constituent within my area, I feel the need that people who are disabled, who cannot move about, they need to have access to their ballot. Someone who, because people don't realize that we're focused on one thing, but a disabled person, if I can speak to this real quick, a disabled person, if they want to get a mail-in ballot in some states, they need to have their ballot notarized, which means they need to have a notary come into their home. Sometimes they have to pay for it, and they may not even be able to pay for it for whatever reason. And then they have to get that witnessed and approved. So then it can delay the time of getting that ballot. And I think as constituents today, we have a responsibility when we're looking at our culture to say, okay, what can I do to minimize all of these challenges? So I'm gonna write into my senator, I'm gonna write into my representative. What can we do to minimize? Well, I wanna talk about the fact that there was less voter fraud in 2020 than we've had previously. So let's communicate that. Let's share the facts. Let's share the truth, and let's get people involved. Let's help someone fill out their voter registration. You can't sign it. You can't tell them what to say, but in case they have questions, you sitting beside them and they say, well, maybe they're not able to read well. Maybe they don't have comprehension or understanding. Well, this is where you can come in and share that. I know I'm going on, so let me be quiet because I'm
Ashe, this is obviously your work. Thank you so much. And we will be having question and answers after all the presenters. So I'm sure somebody will have plenty of questions for you, but please put all the information that you share with us in the chat. We have a couple of questions already in the chat. If you want to respond in the chat, you may do so. Thank you so much, sis. Thank you.
Thank you.
So our next speaker is Dr. Bruce Purnell. Now, some of you may know him from the Love More movement. He is the founder and the executive director of the community-based nonprofit. He is a psychologist, author, artist, speaker, and community activist. There's that word, activist, put that in your bio. Dr. Purnell is a direct descent of the Underground Railroad conductor, station master, freedom fighter, and educators. So he knows his history. So we want to hear from Dr. Purnell. Please bless us with your genius.
All right, love more, everybody. It's such an honor to be here, and what a great use of time and energy. I guess for a moment, I'd like to speak from the community's perspective and kind of what's going on in our communities in our communities today, from our children to our elders. And so I would say first that, we really have to reaffirm our we, because on the ground, and it's almost like, hope, that deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Kind of hope is what's kind of in jeopardy now. The excitement of the election of President Obama, the yes, we can kind of hope, a lot of people became active that never were active before because they just didn't believe that they had a place and a voice in tomorrow. And it's kind of like the feelings that we got punished with Trump in that, and there's been no debriefing about all the people that became active in that, during that era. Our young people want to know that they're valuable enough to love and be loved, to heal, grow, thrive, and transform, and that they can trust in being excited about tomorrow. It's, the idea that, a lot of times we will celebrate the beauty of the butterfly without understanding the journey of the caterpillar. And if we don't, really see our caterpillars as future butterflies, we may even spray poison on them because we see them as furry pests. And if we are able to see our caterpillars as future butterflies, we're going to nurture those paths and be excited about what those butterflies are going to become. And I think our children have a birthright to understand that. And so as we talk about community engagement, we have to kind of reaffirm our we, so that we're that strong in that, like, the idea of who we are and what's the ask and the purpose piece. Like Carter G. Woodson tried to inform us that the education system that we were allowing our children to go into wasn't going to yield the kind of benefits for our community. And that's kind of what we're seeing today. Like, the idea that this was the miseducation of the Negro. And what does that actually mean? Like, what does it mean to be connected right now? What does it mean to be a part of a vibration of love right now? The birthrights of our ancestors, that we be thriving, because believe me, it's a difference between thriving and surviving. If you talk to many of our elders today, and our organization, we have a platform. It's called Seniors Offering Unconditional Love, which is soul, because we say our seniors are our soul, right? And talking to them, they the feeling of being connected in that vibration of not being an extra in your own movie, so to speak, right? Because we're all stars, right? So why should we ever think that we have to be extras in our own movie? Why should we have to accept marginalized citizenship? And the idea that we have to say that Black Lives Matter today is a problem that we have to try to establish that that's a fact. So when we come together and get our we together and get our excitement of our people back, the yes, we can piece back. Like, what is it? Like, what is the purpose? And what are we moving toward? What is our ask? What is our ask? What is it that we actually want for our children? And, I have a deep prayer where I really believe that love wins and God is real. So with those two pieces, the love wins and God is real is kind of my anchor in the entire piece. And as I work with our young, our brothers and sisters, and some who are with rival neighborhood gangs and stuff, they're actually even shooting at each other today. Like, one, we have a historical trauma piece that we got to address as far as the healing. We can't move on until we heal. Like, that has to be established. There's no way to even move forward until we heal. And we've never had time. We've been through the Middle Passage, the slavery, the abolition of slavery, post-Reconstruction Jim Crow, the assassination of our leaders during the Civil Rights Movement, the war on drugs era, right? That we're still we're survivors of all these different eras, but when have we taken time to heal? So, we need to really, embrace ourselves that way and know that, we are valuable enough to love and be loved. We are valuable enough to heal, grow, thrive, and transform. And our ancestors meant for us to thrive. And believe me, we've had to survive, and and that's the resilience piece. And that's one thing I want to stress too. Because a lot of times in mental health, I hear resilience is our goal, And resilience isn't joy. We need resilience to get to joy, but our goal can be being strong enough to endure the next traumatic experience. That's to be able to move into joy. And I'll stop there. And now I'm gonna start with our leaders' affirmation, right? L, love like you've never been hated. E, express yourself like you've never been judged. A, affirm your desires until they become self-fulfilling prophecies. D, dream like you never had a nightmare. R, reflect light like the sun is your magical solar panel. And S, smile so hard that you blind the haters.
Asheo. I love that.
Yay,
Thank you
yay.
so much. We are definitely got to ask you these two questions specifically. So, as a means of tapping into self-determination, how should we address and engage our communities and political needs? Please share with us.
That's a great question. I believe that it's going to begin with knowledge of self. Like, we have to know who we are right now. Like, what is it, and, the journey of our ancestors, how great we are. Look, 72 trillion cells inside of our bodies, for real, like 72 trillion cells makes us a star, not a constellation. 250 million cells fertilizing one egg, right, for a birth, makes every birth a miracle. And we got to start with that foundation. No, we're a miracle right now. And anybody who's been through what we've been through and can still love shows that we are love. Like, there's no other way, around it. I think so. Starting there is our cultural piece that we are love, and we move forward in that vibration.
Ashe, Ashe. And we have just one more question for you. And please stick around for our community engagement Q&A after we're done with our presenters. But our next question is, what culturally informed approach can we engage in, especially during the pandemic, as we continue to move forward politically and with civil engagement?
I think that, that the whole array of the Afrocentric kind of centralizing there and Afrocentricity. I went to right before the pandemic, and with all the Afrocentric schools in DC, we have a graduation. When I saw this group of brothers and sisters with their instructors walking on stilts, talking in, African piece, to me, I mean, just the visual of that showed us like, yeah, that is how we got to connect. Like, that's what it was, but we had to walk on stilts out here. So that Afrocentric approach of being able to also build a bridge for that. Because in some of our communities, it's a language that is not understood. Right. So we have to build a bridge for that, accept everybody where they're at, no judgment, no filter, just know everybody, however you got here and however you survived the trauma, then you're a survivor, and it's a miracle that you're here. And together we can come as we can move together as one.
Asheo, Asheo. Everybody, please give Dr. Bruce Brother Purnell some hands. Thank him for coming. Please stick around for our community engagement piece. All right, everyone, we're moving right along. How are you enjoying the Mbongi so far? We're down to our last presenter. We're doing pretty good. This African-centered think tank that we've developed is amazing. So I just want to, you have to take a breath to introduce our next and final speaker. Baba historian Benson George Cook. Dr. Baba historian Benson George Cook is a professor of counseling and psychology and clinical coordinator for the Graduate Mental Health Counseling Program at the University of the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. He is a prolific and popular speaker who has addressed diverse audiences at national and international conferences, symposiums, workshops, professional institutions, and local and national radio and television programs. And if you are a member of AB Psi, he blesses us every time he speaks with giving our history. So without further ado, please, everyone, please welcome Baba historian, Dr. Benson G. Cook.
Thank you, and I want to share how honored I am to be a part of this forum and to be blessed to stand on not only the shoulders of ancestors and people who taught me, but those who were speakers before now. I come to you, or I would like to come to you as the griot or historian of the Association of Black Psychologists in terms of answering the questions. So I'm going to kind of ask the questions as I move forward by beginning with the first question, which was as a means of tapping into our self-determination, important term. How should we address and engage in political and civic engagement? How our presence can shape elections and beyond our community and political needs. And I want to begin by saying with forums like this, it's with forums like this that we're able to actually, for those who may not be familiar with the Association of Black Psychologists, created in an effort to define our own reality in 1968, saw as its mission and destiny the liberation of the African mind, empowerment of African character, and enlivenment and illumination of the African spirit. And I speak of spirit in the context of understanding that we're really spiritual beings on a human journey, not human beings on a spiritual journey. And so in that context, I think it's important to emphasize the fact that self-determination in action for us has really been conveyed in a number of ways. I think the most significant is that it's been established in a body of the scholarship that we've been able to put forward. That's important to psychological, social, educational, and legal issues that impact significantly the African-American or Black community. Additionally, I think that our scholars have really kind of set the foundation for understanding the importance of Black African identity development, culturally appropriate mental health interventions, and issues that affect both the intellectual and educational assessment process. As some of the speakers earlier have said, we now have to move into other areas as well, like understanding how to address food insecurities. Now, we've been able to do this through the leadership of those who have come to the forefront to head our organization, in addition to which those who have sacrificed in terms of service, those who have sacrificed in terms of volunteer work and the like, to ensure that we can move forward. I want to give honor to our signature journal, the Journal of Black Psychology, which has played a major role in making sure that we could disseminate much of what we consider to be well-respected and highly referenced resources to address many of the issues. In addition, our Psych Discourse. Now, since 1968, the Association of Black Psychologists has really, in terms of this important question, has really explored optimal venues to continue addressing many of the issues that we believe impact our mental health. But we cannot do this without making ourselves aware or creating an awareness between the community and ourselves, so that the community knew that those who felt like they didn't have a voice could find a voice in terms of mental health needs through the Association of Black Psychologists. So we've been able to engage in issues such as reducing recidivism rates within the criminal justice system, establishing proactive juvenile justice policies and practices, developing culturally appropriate disaster relief, both nationally and internationally, and articulating concern and consequences for current public policy, issues like COVID. So in this particular context, rather than waiting for somebody to declare they want to be concerned with our issues and concerns, we've been able to work through the Association of Black Psychologists to establish that ourselves. Now, all of this, in many ways, I believe is part of our current as well as our past. So our past and current and future initiatives that we want to focus on. And all of this, again, is in alignment or committed to the vision, the mission, the service and action of the Association of Black Psychologists. In that regard, partnerships has been key. When I talk about partnerships, I'm talking about relationships with those organizations and agencies that are also committed to supporting our constituencies. Our constituencies are not only Black folk coast to coast, border to border in the US, but in the Caribbean, in parts of every place where the diaspora occurred after the Great Moaffe experience of enslavement. So we're in Europe, we're in Africa, we're in the Caribbean, we're in Central America, South America, and Pacific Island areas. And all of these represent areas where we form these partnerships to make sure that we're speaking with one voice to those of us who in our community need to know that they are cared for, that they matter. Now, we've engaged in issues where we've been able to focus on state legislative issues in the context of working with state representatives like Sykes, who spoke earlier today, representing the state of Ohio. And if I can give a plug, I was born and raised in Ohio, although I'm currently not there anymore. But clearly, I think the civics lessons I learned then gave me a really strong foundation to being able to understand how important the work that you do is currently for not only the state of Ohio, but for our nation. And I appreciate you being a part of our forum for today. In many instances, we also recognize that as the Association of Black Psychologists, the importance of being connected with our congressional representatives in the House of Representatives and the Senate. In this particular light, I got to give a shout out to one of our beloved members, Sister Cheryl Tawedi Grills. She has really, I think, helped to form some very powerful contacts like Congresswoman Karen Bass, and with other members of the Congressional Black Caucus to ensure that we can sustain that voice. You know, it was an opportunity that I was able to participate in with ABSI back in 2010, where we had 3 days of landmark meetings on Capitol Hill with, at that particular time, Congressman John Conyers, who was chair of the Judiciary Committee, as well as many others. And we were able to focus on many of the initiatives that are really important to ensuring the enlightenment of the African mind. There are other partnerships that we've been able to develop during this time. And I just want to speak quickly, don't have enough time to hit all of them, but I want to hit some key ones that I think are critically important that those listening and members may just need to be reminded of. We were able to form a very powerful relationship with Susan Taylor, who is formerly editor-in-chief at Essence Magazine with her National Cares Mentoring Movement. And through that, we were able to form issues that focused on what was called the Pen or Pencil Program, where we're working with the National Cares Movement and the National Alliance of Faith and Justice. Here, we were basically focusing on working across 14 cities in the United States, delivering culturally competent community and school group mentoring that includes research evaluation components to make sure that what people are needing, they are actually receiving. Someone spoke earlier, the previous speaker, about the importance of love, the importance of healing. Well, we, the Association of Black Psychologists, put together the Emotional Emancipation Circles as a way of being able to address the Great Moaffe experience. And in that particular context, ABSI and the Community Healing Network are working together to establish a global network of emotional emancipation circles. These are self-help groups focused on emotional emancipation, healing and wellness for Black people. In partnership with CHN and ABSI, we've developed a framework and a model for the implementation of the emotional emancipation circles, because they're designed to help people of African ancestry in the US and throughout the African diaspora to defy the lie of the myth of Black inferiority. I'm going to say that added to this has been an opportunity through the Congressional Black Caucus to have a forum with them for several years now during their meetings, where we can begin to talk about this and make sure that they can present that to their constituencies across the United States. Talk about other partnerships. Another partnership that plays an important role we talked about, someone mentioned earlier, the war on drugs. Well, the Institute of the Black World, 21st Century, has been another area where politics becomes important. They launched a national drug policy reform initiative to end the war on drugs and the derivative policing and criminal justice policies and practices.
0 parts of having to tackle.
Okay, that have disproportionately and adversely impacted Black communities, along with other Black national organizations. So we've been able to work with them to make sure that we're addressing these issues. We've also engaged in work with culturally grounded mental health and behavioral organizations, looking for solutions in that regard. So ABSI has collaborated with the African American Health Institute and developed a blueprint for providing culturally grounded solutions for mental health and behavioral issues in African American populations. Created by our community, in our community, for our community. And these reports, initiating in California, have now begun to resound nationwide, coast to coast, border to border. Looking at programs that may have started at the state level, like the African Center Reentry Program, working with a commitment to the California Institute for Women to test culturally tailored approaches to reentry to redress recidivism in African American women, to programs that address obesity in African American girls and women. The list goes on. The Association of Black Psychologists continues to recognize the importance of collaborating, connecting, but at the same time, making sure that we present this to state, to federal representatives so that they know what the community is asking for can be found through organizations like ours and those that we collaborate with. I have to end on international collaboration, so with this first question, because ABSI as an organization has presented at the Caribbean Psychological Conference, where we've collaborated on a number of different issues. We presented at the International Conference of Psychology held in South Africa, where we've collaborated on these issues that look at African-centered psychology and understanding the history and the mission of what it needs to be successful. We've also been able to send delegations to Cuba to focus on understanding the importance of what they've learned about cultural retentions, and at the same time formed a relationship with universities, including University of Ghana, where we work very closely with other African nations as well. In this regard, I think that it's really clear that we recognize that these are the areas that we're able to really begin to make a difference in terms of recognizing the importance of politics and self-determination. Which kind of takes me, if you don't mind, to the second question.
Absolutely, go right ahead.
In terms of what culturally informed approaches can we engage in, especially during the pandemic, as we move towards political and civil engagement? Well, I think it's important to recognize what I've shared earlier, succinctly put, is recognizing forums like this, recognizing that at our ABSI General Assembly meeting, this forum, at our international annual conventions, we address these issues. We address these issues with our collaboration partners. We could address these issues to make sure that there is community engagement. We reach out to the community. We invite the community in. Do we need to do more of that? Yes, we do, and we will, to ensure that they know that the voice that we're hearing from them is their authentic voice, and that the issues and solutions we present are actually addressing the concerns that they have in terms of the longstanding disparities, issues around low wealth, whatever the case may be. But it's also important, I think, that we move towards recognizing the importance of each of us, each one teach one. Those of us who belong to churches, who belong to mashis, who belong to spiritually based organizations, who belong to Greek organizations, who belong to civic organizations, whatever you belong to, make sure that you impart onto them the importance of the message that's been shared by the speakers who have been speaking in this particular forum. I think, when you look at community engagement like the Souls to Polls, recognizing that we bring these entities to the polls becomes important. As it was stated earlier, making sure that people are registered, that we carry that out. Like some, I listen to SiriusXM radio, and I listen to the Joe Madison show, give a plug to my brother. And in his show, they advertise something that I want to add to the list of what's already been added by Gail Dudley, and that is 5 calls. If you go to Google right now and you put 5 calls in, you will see that this is an app that allows you to make your voice heard. How? It basically finds the legislature representatives where you live, and then it gives you a list of all of the issues that need to be addressed. So if you don't want to Google too many things, you can go to this one-stop shop and Google in there and basically reach to the people who represent you and make sure that they know that you are sharing your voice to be heard for the issues that are being presented. And in these ways, I think that we can begin to have a level of political impact that really, I think in many instances will address from a personal perspective, from a cultural perspective, from a practical perspective, the importance of our voice being heard and helping to ensure that we define our reality in ways that are meaningful for us. And with that, I yield my time.
Ashe, ashe, ashe. Oh, thank you. Baba, everybody, please give our jazz hands to Baba Vincent for his wonderful, wonderful work. Thank you for all the information that you've given us today. We are going to go into panel mode. So can we have all of our speakers up top, and we're going to have some community engagement with questions and answers. So if you feel the need to ask a question, please raise your hand. To raise your hand, you go to the little smiley face with a plus sign at the lower portion of your screen, and you will see raise hand as a feature, and you will be called on to answer the question. As soon as you are called upon, please feel free to ask your question. We're at the 30-minute mark exactly. Congratulations, speakers, because we all know how nerve-wracking it is to stay in time to present. You did an excellent job. So we are actually ahead of schedule, all right, on no CP time. So we have all of our presenters up. Senator Sykes had to step away, but his chief of staff will be coming on shortly to answer questions in regards to his work. So if you have a question for Senator Sykes, please hold it until we get his chief of staff on. But if you have questions for anyone that's on currently, please feel free to raise your hand. Will I be able to see them on my end, Jojo?
Yeah, we're actively monitoring YouTube as well as Facebook and Twitter and all the things. So.
Okay. Awesome. So Senator Sykes, Chief of Staff, is not feeling well, but if you put your questions in the chat, just put Senator Sykes in front of your question, and then we know exactly who it's going to. So first question, with your hand raised, who do we have? And then we can unmute them.
I think the questions are coming through the chat, Lanya. Can you see the chat?
I can. I don't see anything coming up on my end though.
Okay, so I'll just, I think this came through on YouTube. Peace and greetings. Thank you for sharing resources and energy. How do artists get involved? I guess with the Association of Black Psychologists, as well as with some of the other initiatives that my fellow panelists have talked about.
Well, I can definitely speak to the Association of Black Psychologists because we have a variety of memberships. So like myself, I'm an associate member of the association because I am not a psychologist or early career professional as a psychologist. So as an associate member, as a master level social worker, or anyone in the behavioral health field, we have an associate membership that you can support the association and be connected to us in that way.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think a lot of the times people get deterred from participating in the ABSI because they see that psychologist piece. But we do welcome, educators, creatives, and all the things. I think at one of our, I don't know what event it was, but we had an artist come and share a song about her own experience with mental health. And I think that using the creative arts, especially as a way to engage Black folks, is a way to kind of destigmatize mental health, because as Black folks, we are going through a lot. We're constantly enduring ongoing trauma, which can be detrimental to not only our mental health, but our physical well-being, our spiritual well-being, our academic functioning. And so if you are a creative, sharing your story as a way to authentically engage, the community can be a way for people to kind of check in with themselves and to gently call them in. So anywhere you see yourself fitting in, please definitely try to get in. You can connect with us via Twitter, social media, all the things, Facebook, Instagram. So that's how you can get involved. Just let us know how you'd like to be involved. And that's how.
Okay. And I know we had a question about how to get involved in the emotional emancipation circles. Baba Benson, could you speak to that?
Yeah, I know that our beloved past president had played an important role, and I don't know if she is able to kind of join in and help me answer this. Ethiopia Jackson is who I'm speaking of. She may not be, but I would say reach out to, at this point, I would suggest reaching out to our national president and finding out from him. But I think there has been a link, at least on the past websites, where they can basically reach out and find out more information about the emotional emancipation circles.
Shay, thank you so much.
And our current president is Donnell Barrett, sorry, Dr. Donnell Barrett.
Yes.
And the previous Dr. Ethiopia Jackson.
Yes, yes. Okay. Jojo, do you have any questions on your end?
Yeah, that question was directed at all the panelists, I want to say. I know we heard about how to engage our community with Black farmers and also voting, disenfranchisement, and things like that. So how can folks get involved with all the different initiatives that we all spoke on?
I put my
Have my hand up if I know it's kind of dark, but when you get a chance.
I put my email address on the chat, I think. And so if people are interested in what's happening as far as the Black farmers are concerned, or the Emotional Transformation Council, or the other things that I spoke about, you can reach out to me via email and I'll get back to you. It's NASMI, N as in Nancy, A as in Sam, A as in Apple, S as in Sam, M as in Mary, A as in Apple, I as in Igloo, .jackson@gmail.com. NASMI stands for New African Spiritual Mindset Awareness Institute.
Ashe, and could each of our guests leave their email address or contact information, how you would like the public to get a hold of you in the chat at this time, because it may have gotten buried in the feed. And we have a question while you're doing that. We have a question coming from our president-elect.
Hello, everybody. I have a couple questions. I'll start with, I am consistently getting questions around the connection between Community Healing Network, EEC, and Sarah Bonner circles. And so I don't know if Baba Benson can answer that question, but I'm kind of saying, because we've been around here all along, they all are extension of each other, but people are like, what's the difference and why? If you can speak to that.
Well, as a founding committee member of the Sawubona Healing Circles, I can tell you these are emergency responses to the traumas and the interactions with things going on in the world. So for example, when the Sawubona Healing Circles launched, we were in the middle of a pandemic, right? And we needed an emergency response at the moment. So the circles launched in that era for first responders and people that were boots on the ground experiencing the repeated cultural traumas and what we call the double pandemic. So we are emergency response system and a monthly regular circle type check-in. And the Sawubona Healing Circles are also can be enacted at any time during a crisis. And I think that's the main difference between EECs, because EEC is more of a structured format that is initiated, taken, and then you become certified in. Is that a good distinction?
That's one part. That part is excellent. The next part would be that the Community Healing Network and ABSI, the partnership there took place under the leadership of Dr. Cheryl Tuwedi Grills. And it came out of the work that initially started with the Pen and Pencil program and then eventually evolved into the Emotional Emancipation Circles. So through those partnerships, the Emotional Emancipation Circles have been the two areas where an organization created by an attorney and an organization created for psychologists kind of came together and began to join our efforts. They continue to exist to do the things that they do, and we partnered with them on issues that are kind of in sync right now. And the emotional emancipation circles is the one that I know was foundational to the two coming together.
Okay. And I believe the structure is different, correct? There's several circles in a sequence of learning. Is that correct?
In terms of the emotional emancipation circles?
Yes.
I can't speak directly. I haven't gone through the full training of it. My understanding, though, is that the leadership of the people who initially started it began to provide training for those who provided nationally and internationally.
Yes.
And through their training, they would go out and train. So it's train the trainers kind of process for that. And so again, I think checking the site, and I mispronounced his name earlier, Dr. Donnell Barnett would be, who is our current president. I would strongly recommend, you could reach out to him and he would be able to direct you to the site to get more information about that.
Ashe. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Other questions coming in, Deidre?
Yeah, we had a comment and question that spoke to, I guess, political and civic engagement. The comment being cultivating future candidates is also important so that year after year, the community isn't voting for the lesser of two evils, but for candidates that have been vetted and are clear on their agenda. So folks who do the more politically interfacing work, how do we get, I guess, Black folks more motivated to become candidates?
I would love to answer that if I can.
Absolutely.
One thing that I'm seeing, I live here in Central Ohio, so you have Ready to Run, which is a one-day training at the Ohio State University, the political science department, the John Glenn Institute of John Glenn. You also have She Should Run. That's one for females. You also have Emily's List. You also have the Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party and the Green Party that has different opportunities out there for people to run. Now, along with those that are available, I think it's something totally different when you come in as a Black or brown person ready to run for an office. And I think that there should be an investment of having someone to work alongside you, whether it's one-on-one coaching or consulting, so that you understand, okay, what does it take for us to fundraise? Because there has to be a dollar amount beside that. For you to be able to go toe-to-toe with people, that fundraising piece is crucial. So looking at the budgets, people need to understand, okay, the vetting process, talking with everyone. I'm a graduate of Center for Progressive Leadership, and we went through a vetting process to look at everyone around you, because they're going to come in. You may be clean, but they're coming to attack everyone around you, especially if they're not wanting you to run and or win. So then you go through and you have your conversation with your family, your friends, your coworkers. You got to go through your social media. We're so quick to put things on social media. If you're thinking about running, the number one thing I will say to you is start cleaning up that social media. Understanding a lot of that is stored, but start cleaning it up or start making an effort of, these are the things that I'm going to post and why I'm going to post them. Your YouTube videos, everything. And then start looking at, okay, what is my 3-minute pitch? What does that look like? What am I going to stand for? What am I going to have my conversation around? What are my morals and values around those things? And then in addition to that, how can I build my platform, and who am I going to bring alongside of me to help in building that platform? There is so much room for Black and brown people ready to run for office, but we also have to support them. They will need our dollars. They will need our support. It is free to share on social media. So if I can pause and bring this back, we also have to be assertive enough to share the post of other people. That is completely free. That costs you nothing. But within our community, we have to be eager and ready to support one another, even bringing up those people that you may say, well, I have never heard of them. I don't know their name, but they may be the person we need. If we want to really see a change on local and national government, We're going to have to start bringing people to the platform and to the forefront who we've never heard from, but we have to get behind them. But it starts with that fundraising, and it starts with vetting that person and everyone around them, and that their message has to be clear. What is their message? And I'm available to talk one-on-one with people if anybody has any questions. I put my email in the chat.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think Dr. Cook has.
Yeah, if I may,
Sure.
I just want to chime in with what you said with 2 points. And this is, again, another shameless plug to Joe Madison. He makes this statement, which I find really profound. He says, the difference between a moment and a movement is sacrifice. And what you're really speaking to is something that is critically important for our organization, any organization, and us as a people. It's the importance of sacrifice.
Right.
Recognizing that we can't wait for somebody to do for us what we need to do. We have to do it. And there's an African proverb that kind of fits that, I think, succinctly. And it's like, knowledge is like a garden. If it is not cultivated, it cannot be harvested. So in that context, we have to realize the importance of sacrifice, and we have to begin to basically cultivate and harvest that which we want. And you've been speaking to that, as have all the other brilliant speakers. I just wanted to kind of make that point clear. Thank you.
And if I can come back, I'm sorry, can I come back to what you just said there, Dr. Cook, as well? The thing is, people are afraid because they're not sure what's in their past. Well, as long as you have that messaging, and I'll pulling up there, that sacrifice, we can get around that. We can't back down from that. And I want people to stop being so afraid to run. For example, people have asked me to run because of my love. And I was like, no, I'd rather do the work on this end to continue to empower and encourage and motivate people. But you cannot be afraid to run. And we cannot be afraid to support that person who puts their name on the list.
Ashe.
I also think, I see you, President-elect Dr. Bethea. I just wanted to quickly say that we also can't be afraid to question everything. I think a lot of the times people have, and with good reason, a cultural mistrust for people who engage politically. So like our senators and, the people that we are voting for. So because, all skin folk ain't your kinfolk, and just because they're Black and they look like us, that doesn't mean that they will have our best interests at heart. If we look at people like, no offense, AOC, she made certain campaign promises, but then she was on the other side of some of those campaign promises once she got in office. And so I think that it's a matter of consciousness. You know what I'm saying? Like, are these people that are coming to run, are they in alignment with Eurocentric Western ideologies, and do they have the best interests of African people? And so I think that that's also a fear of people, wanting to run because they might fear that they don't have enough power and I guess reservation to not lose themselves when they do engage these political systems. And so I'll stop right there off my soapbox, Dr. Bethea.
Well, and actually we have a question. We have a question that goes, unless Dr. Bethea's question is directly correlated to civil engagement. We have a question for Baba Cook and the speakers in regards to psychological trauma for those undergoing the vetting process, like Octavia Butler's Weird Spaces, called Politics.
And I had a question for Dr. Purnell, but I can wait.
Okay. So how do we, if you're going through the vetting process, you're running for office, the psychological and emotional trauma that you're enduring while you're trying to do that. Can you, Dr. Cook, speak to that?
Okay, give me the question again, because I'm not seeing it on my chat.
Okay, it is, sorry, I lost it. It says could you speak to psychological trauma for those undergoing the vetting process when running for office?
So I imagine, in terms of the vetting process, getting into one's personal life, would that be, I guess, part of what the question is?
And the traumas that go along with even running for office, I suppose, is the question.
So certain sheroes in my life come to mind. Mm-hmm. Fannie Lou Hamer at the Democratic Convention in the 60s said, you're trying to block me out, but I'm here because I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Mm-hmm. And even though what she had in her history made her offensive to those who tried to block her voice, from being a part of the political process, she made a decision that I'm not going to continue to settle for what's been going on, to continually have it go on without me raising my voice to it. And so in many instances, again, the difference between a movement and a movement is sacrifice. You have to recognize that if what you're speaking for is more important than what other people think about you, then that needs to be your focus. You know, that needs to be your focus.
Okay.
She also had a statement, I can't remember the exact quote, but it went something along this line, that some people were kind of telling her, just lay back and pray about it. And she said, you know, praying about it is not the only thing. Like faith without work is dead. So you've got to actually be about the work and doing what needs to be done. So the trauma, I imagine, might be your business being put out in the street. But if the business of the people in ensuring our survival is of higher importance, I believe that that needs to be the focus. Now, if one is traumatized to the point that they need to have someone that they can speak to, you have the Association of Black Psychologists, we got referrals. We'd be more than happy to talk with you to help empower you to recognize the importance of your voice in terms of addressing the issues, not only in the community that you live, but in the nation that we are a part of as well.
Okay.
I don't know if that addressed it directly, but hopefully indirectly it gives some guidance.
And it actually addressed one of the other questions in regards to surrounding genocide. What type of resources and therapy are there out there? My recommendation, if you have any emotional health needs or questions, please contact the Association of Black Psychologists. We have thousands of clinicians with expertise that can help you in any of those areas. Dr. Bethia?
Hi, I had a question for Dr. Purnell, and just going through some of this work. And I just wanted to know some more information or your thoughts and your process around your TILT curriculum. And then kind of wondering what's happening with your book, Finding My Eagle. And so just that whole process around, yeah, those two things.
Yeah.
I could ask more, but I'll start there.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, TILT has evolved into transformative life coaches and healing leaders. And we actually had our first graduation at Union Temple Baptist Church in Southeast Washington with about 50 community members. And they went through the curriculum, and what it is about committing to healing and leadership, and then being on the ground in the trenches, working with ourselves, families, and communities, and in the healing process. And the book Finding My Eagle, it's almost like as I think I'm finished, I'm finding out more about my family ancestry and have to include, I had to include more, but I'm at the final, I think I'm at the final stage of it. And it's, I guess even in purpose, even first just wanted to get it out, but then it became bigger. My family story became our story, right? Not even just my family's story, but our story that hasn't been told. The story of the Underground Railroad has not been told. The idea of what liberation means right now. I feel like we've been rerouted to like a goal being accumulation of paper money instead of liberation. And we need to get regrounded again, because like it's like the actual purpose and what it means. Because for me, like purpose has changed, and now I'm like, wow, like if I knew what I knew now, but disseminating the real, a movement toward liberation for myself, what evolution means for me and my community, being connected to so many seniors. And I said for everybody, man, my seniors, wow, their vision and their living history right now. So having them infused into whatever process we're talking about in a real meaningful way, not to feel that, their goal, we're going to play bingo on Wednesdays. No, that's not going to be it. Like we're going to be a part of healing our community. So yeah, y'all saw that. But so hopefully by the end of this year, the book will be out. Finding My Ego, The Power of a Legacy, and the curriculum will be published. Like now I'm at the point of publishing this curriculum, which also includes healing stations. So now our motto is building healing stations in all of our underloved communities. And then for the world, as a model for the world, every community should have somewhere we can go and know if you get there, you're going to be okay.
Ashe, Ashe, thank you for that. We have one final question for Ia about food insecurity. So people who want to create a community garden to meet the needs of food insecurities, what wisdom do you have for them?
Contact me.
I'm sorry?
Contact me. Give me a call.
Find her in the chat. That's the answer. Find her in the chat. So we are.
That's a multi-leveled question.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of that needs to be taken into consideration when that's.
Ashe. Ashe. Dr. Benson?
If I can just add something to that very briefly. My research focuses on understanding transgenerational treatment for issues around depression and oppression by looking at and understanding epigenomics, which is gene expression, which is a way of recognizing that health factors and social factors at critical developmental periods impact us at an epigenomic level and can be responsible for kind of the transmission of illnesses from one generation to the next. Part of the work that I do at the University of the District of Columbia is work very closely outside of the silo of the College of Arts and Sciences with the College of Agriculture and Urban Sustainability. And with that program, we work very closely with places like Union Temple Baptist Church in Washington, D.C., where we go into the community and we help the inner city grow their own food. We help them grow their own food. We help them harvest their own food. We help them learn how to cook their own food, how to sell their own food, how to regrow their own food in a variety of different ways that helps to ensure that communities that have dotted around them within a 5-minute walk, liquor stores and corner stores, and don't have access to grocery stores that have, whole food, can begin to do for themselves what the community has not structured a support system for. And so by doing that, it's like, again, each one teach one. It's about educating for the sake of being able to create a greater awareness of what people can do for themselves.
Ashe, Ashe. And my favorite famous gangster gardener, Ron Finley, would speak highly of all of those things. He's my favorite here in California from Compton. He was putting gardens on the side of the road and got in trouble. So on that note, we will end with our Q&A session. Thank you all so much for being available for this portion. If there are any further questions from anybody online or here, please direct them to our General Assembly Chair, and she'll be sure to get all of get them answered for you. And now, without further ado, our final words will come from our President, Dr. Donnell Barnett.
I'm not seeing him in the Zoom. President Barnett, are you with us?
I don't see him either. So let's make sure. Okay, our GA chair, our General Assembly mistress, goddess, sister, Tiffany Porter will be coming on to give us some words of wisdom.
Thank you all so much. This has been absolutely amazing. We are truly grateful for community. We're grateful for your wisdom. We are grateful for our elders and ancestors. So we have to keep this momentum moving forward. Each one of us has a talent that we can bring to make the load a little bit easier to carry. So again, if anyone has any questions, need to reach out to any of our panelists, please get in contact with me. I want to also thank all of the panelists again. I am truly grateful for each of you. Your words have just touched my soul, and I know that they have touched the souls of others. So thank you all. Much love to you all. And this concludes our first Mbongi of the day. Thank you all so